So the first learning is that you do not necessarily see that in the statistics, because statistics comes too late. We want to do the maths before. And please, that's the beauty of it. Because if they were in the statistics, everybody's going to jump into it, and at the end of the day, the market will crash. So be ahead of the curve. The second learning is that the more it takes time to percolate, it reinforces our point that don't try to invent or anticipate the next big thing, because possibly the seeds are already happening now, but it's a question of time. Second point is that it's not only about money that will come directly as value appropriation. It's usually a lot of value creation in the economy that will be passed on to the consumer, for instance. Good news, if the money is as big as what I said before, even with 5% of that going to you, you're going to be rich, okay? The economics are such that today, if you look at the rent of entrepreneurs across every cycles in every countries, give and take 5 to 10% of the value creation by entrepreneur and disruptive technologies, that value has accrued to them. 90 to 95 were basically spread out in user surplus, in business surplus, into government surplus, or into new competitors taking the money. But again, imagine that you have a market of 1 trillion, you take 5% of that, that's not that bad. So the whole point here is that don't be confused. Don't go and say, I want big today, because the value appropriation takes time, but the value creation is fundamental. Third point, in all the technology we've looked at, and the most promising one, okay, it's good to be thinking the garage myth. But the garage myth is actually a myth, because there is 1 out of 10,000 myths, garage innovation that went to the market and disrupt the market. Most of the time you need a process, you need an ecosystem, and I think I love to be here with you because the iCreative ecosystem development, the thing that you share to create externalities in the ecosystem, is usually one of the key foundations of this innovation. And by the way, most of the time, guess what? Governments are actually extremely responsible for making this happen. Usually they don't know, but most of the time they were the one to make it happen. You know, I can think about the Genome Project, I can think about the ARPANET project, and you can say, well, in this public-private partnership usually don't work. I'm not talking about public-private partnership. I'm talking about a fundamental insight from this research, which is if you're an entrepreneur and you only obey the law of entrepreneurship and private money needs a cost of capital to be reimbursed. If your cost of capital is 10%, after 10 years, and it takes 10 years for the market to develop, you're going to need 3 times the funding that you have today to make it happen. So most of the time, when there is no market, government happen to create the seed. So watch out. Even in this country, whatever you claim or disclaim or you don't like about government and the like, the real question is, does the government possibly ever already planted and seeds some of the technology that you will see? If yes, please collaborate, push the envelope, see what else you can basically use. I'm not talking about planification like in some market like Singapore, but my point is that usually there is the technology will not come from your own internalization, it will come from externalization. Now, the winners, I came now close to the 12, again the contenders. On the contenders, there are 5. We are still among ourselves debating whether they should be part of the list. The first one was carbon sequestration. The next one was next generation nuclear. Fusion as well was something we were pretty close to include. Obviously, quantum computing is the next big thing, and water purification. Now, the reason why they're not in the list, but you should possibly put them in the list, is because when we look in this short list of technologies, they were close to the bar, but not entirely to the bar. They were not entering into the bar, especially because the potential, we put an artificial limit of 2025. And if we look at the maths, in all the case of value creation and destruction, it was just very difficult to see whether they could be as disruptive as the list that we will see after this. Fusion, the rate of technological change, is not that speedy. And again, quantum computing, give and take, if the rate starts to simply increase, that should be included in the list. But today we came to conclusion, we still have some doubt. So again, as an example, quantum computing is obviously it will be transformative because it will dramatically change the power of computers. But today, the time frame is what made us believe that 2025 is possibly not where it will have percolated across all the industries, and especially the adoption curve of this technology usually takes more than 10 years. We took obviously the fancy thing, I wanted to put it like space flight. Obviously there will be application, and we are pretty optimistic there will be. They tend to be narrow niche at this stage, like the space tourism. They will be obviously quite important in some verticals when you think about broadband internet and private launch of satellites and so on. I'm quite sure it will be quite impactful, but it will be pretty much verticalized, not necessarily globalized at the level of an economy. So our point was there are contenders, but they don't pass our test. Now the 12 technologies which pass the test are the following one. So first, obviously advanced materials, and I will give you a bit more of why we went there and what to make out of it. What is fascinating about advanced material is that for the first time, we finally don't have to make trade-offs, i.e. the feature of advanced materials are pretty much systematically better than before in terms of strength, in terms of weight, in terms of conductivity, or even in terms of functionality. So this is the magic bullet. On the 4 drivers materials, each of those attributes are changing in the positive sense. Advanced robotic, the same thing. We start to see, as we discussed, amazingly dexterity. We see fast intelligence to automate a task. But what is more important is that we see that the combination of that with certain type of technology like RFID and the like, and advanced materials create very flexible bots that at the end of the day can finally not only do tasks, which is the fourth way of looking at manufacturing, but start to do things that humans could not do. So it's not about substitution, it's about enhancing. Think about the Google Glass as an extension of your eyes and the way you're going to play golf if you read the newspaper today. But the point is that it augments. Advanced oil and gas exploration, the techniques of extraction are quite unconventional. Again, whether it's going to be a big market and the like and all the political discussion around it, we come to conclusion that, hey, this is something that needs to be looked at from a resource point of view. I'm personally a big fan of energy storage. The more you can store energy and control it, the better a lot of the value chain will dramatically evolve on the consumer side. I will show you some examples of that. Next generation genomic is not only here to stay, but it's promising, and it's amazingly promising. Why? Because it's fast, it's low-cost gene sequencing is there. It will be improved by, obviously, the fact that all this data can be crunched, detailed, and create process of discovery through big data analytics, and obviously, it will be enhanced by synthetic biology. 3D printing as well is something we believe is going to be quite big. And again, I will give you examples that most of the people don't think about, not only because of the technology, but how it impacts value chain. Mobile internet is already here to stay. Intelligent software system is one of the things we believe is important. The Internet of Things is obviously, actually for me, more important than the mobile internet, simply because these networks will possibly link so many objects, and everything that links objects can basically work combined with advanced robotics, advanced materials, and create its own autonomous type of economic system. Cloud, a lot of people had doubt about the cloud for different type of reasons, but we start to see the takeoff of cloud. And we believe as well the cloud will have a lot of implication on the IT industry, and by definition, if it is on the ICT, it will have on many sectors. Autonomous and near autonomous vehicles, again, it's pretty much a narrow lens of what we call the new infrastructures of cities. I will come back to that. And finally, obviously, everything which is renewable energies. Now, looking at the numbers, we try as much as we could to create the value creation aspect of it. Here are some of the numbers in trillion, okay? And it's trillion of today, and that means they've been discounted back from the future. So if you make the numbers by 2025, these numbers will be up to 2-3 times bigger. Now, first observation, you see that the range is quite high, between low and high. Sometimes it's 4 trillion when we count all the application and distribution of mobile internet, up to 10 trillion. The reality is likely to be in between. The way these numbers have been done, by the way, has been, I call it pseudo-scientifical, because we run a lot of scenarios and we basically went from Monte Carlo analysis to basically create the distribution. But what you see is that a few are much bigger than others. But again, remember, these are macro figures. And some of that are just surplus that will be given back to government, to users, and all these things. Now, obviously, it's only measurable what we know. I don't know what I don't know. So the point is that we try to quantify what is possible to quantify, so these numbers as well are likely to be a lower bound. If history is a good sign of the picture, any numbers that we have estimated, again, if we look again at the ICT curve, usually the impact we have assumed were pretty much 1/3 of the final impact. So again, these numbers are likely to be a lower bound, and you could possibly multiply the number by a factor of 2 to 3 if you basically look at what we don't know yet today. So quite significant. And I'm going a bit faster. If I look at distribution and numbers, again, the point is that in all of these drivers, we went to look at the 4 elements of technology distribution. And just to give you an example, advanced robotic, the disruptive pools. Well, today there are something like, if you take surgery, for instance, there are today up to 250 million annual surgeries. That's a big number. Now imagine that 10 to 15 of them will be used by advanced robotics. Not only the hit rate of this, the survival rate, the wellness rate, typically increase by 10 to 20%. So if you start doing the math of the value of a wealthy person to be productive in the economy, or the value of a life, and you start to put these numbers into perspective, it's becoming amazingly high. And again, it's advanced robotics. The impact on healthcare and in public policy is quite high. In my country, social security is obviously every year in deficit in Belgium, and the social security, if you take out unemployment, pretty much 50% of the deficit comes from healthcare, because people on surgery at minimum need to stay 4 or 5 days in hospital for the minimum type of basic disease. With advanced robotics and the like, and remote control, all of that, this could be 1-2 days, and most of the time could be outside of the hospital. So the impact of that's going to be huge. Many hospitals will need to change, recluster in terms of specialization, will possibly move into much more home care, and obviously that will be much more technology driven than it is today. So that means hospital will not have all the rights and all the money to fund, and will need to work in cluster. So all that in itself will have a huge impact to advanced robotics. The same thing about the car of Google. We make the anecdote that, hey, it used to drive 200 kilometers without having to face an accident. No joke apart, if you drive in the desert of Arizona, it's going to be very difficult to get a car accident, possibly. But the whole point is that you have to think about not that, but imagine, and that's what we have done, these technologies are all coming in the same time. So don't look at them separately, but look at the combination. Now, with a combination of mobile internet, sensor, and cars, the next public transports will be basically guided by what time you want to take a car. You can book it directly online. You can have the sensors telling where you are, and you can do a lot of automation. Now, that looks science fiction? No. I'm quite sure if we have the person from Israel, Israel is possibly one of the first countries to basically start to not only automate, but to create a green highways where you got all the storage for you to put your car and to refuel in one way or re-hit your car. But they're already thinking about business models in cities. And decongestioning cities like London, New York, or for that matter, cities in India will dramatically improve your productivity. But that's only one aspect. The second aspect is that the next day you have, imagine in 2025, an industry where, a city where this car exists, and that's the only way to drive a car. Do you think that the P&C motor insurance will still exist? It's likely to still exist because if there is a glitch in the system and there is a big car accident, which is based on the failed automation, because the circuits or one of the sensor was not working, that's going to be very different. But that means it will move to industrial insurance, and it's not going to move into your own insurance, and radically will change the way you do insurance. Now, that's the kind of implication that we look at. We look at this and say, what does that mean for industry? And when we start putting the scenarios, these technologies, most of the time combined, radically wiped out certain industries that exist today, or change dramatically industries with a lot of cross-subsidization. Again, the motor insurance industry is based on a simple principle, and that principle is that I cannot segment you, I cannot know you too well, but statistically, I can basically say, look, I will possibly have, if I'm lucky, no accident. You possibly going to be unlucky in your life. You will have 2 or 3. Let's pool this risk. Let's make a price out of that, and we make money out of that. Now, the more you can, the danger of insurance is that the better you can play the pricing to your own specificities and nobody else can do, they can do much better money because they can self-select the risk. But in the long term, if everybody get the playing field, and this is going to be an institutionalization of the insurance, at the end of the day, the pricing they will get will lead them to competition with a price of 0, and there will be no insurance companies, at least on the motor side. So that's the way we look at it. And again, I don't want to give you the full pictures, but here is also an interesting point. Don't believe the hype, at least according to our numbers and all the detail we have done. The hypes don't necessarily go hand in hand with the value. The hype is about marketing. What we look at is the potential of disruption. So the way we look at that is the impact on the horizontal axis. We look as a fun of it. Obviously, there are many more the metrics you can take. We look at articles in media in 2012, and again, yes, you see that renewable energy is possibly quite high versus the impact. Internet of Things, cloud technology is possibly not longer that hype, but still promised to affect a lot of industry and disrupt technologies. And so the point we want to make is that, yes, you need to do your homework, but usually the hype is not what you should take care of. It's obviously the bottom-up analysis of the future. Now, as I said, here is an interesting point. And again, this is just the summary of our report, but we were struck by the fact when we ran the numbers, we always come to an interesting conclusion, that for the first time, this set of technologies are likely to impact, in terms of value creation, more the developed world than the developing world. In some cases, quite significantly so. If you look at advanced materials, 90%, in mobile internet, obviously up to 50% will be there. Now, if you look at the split of GDP today, developed versus developing, we talk today about 80% developed, 20% developing. So the limit should be 20%. The only case where we see 20% is in cases like advanced robotic a bit. We see that a bit in advanced oil and gas. But again, in renewable energies, In case like automation of works, intake of mobile internet, we see the impact being much bigger. Now, I know India is doing that already. Just to summarize, in fact, when we look at all these technologies, I think you're going to have 5 breakouts. We believe there are 4, but that's a different way of clustering, I guess. The very first one is that we see really a cluster, and it's important to understand these clusters because they all interact. One key insight is that these technologies are all going to be coming in the same time, so look at the interface. The interface is possibly sometimes the enabler of those technologies. So the first one is IT, how you use it, mobile internet, cloud, Internet of Things, and internet and automation of knowledge work. The last one, by the way, I didn't talk too much about it, but it's important. Automation has usually been for simple tasks, the blue-collar type of work or stuff. Now it's becoming knowledge work. This is huge impact because when we talk to government about that, that means that, in fact, low-skill labor is already being substituted. Knowledge worker is starting to be. The only thing is starting not to be is knowledge works that come, it's enhanced by new way of working, and obviously creativity. A bot cannot create. A bot can process much faster than your brain, but cannot create. So we are a big fan that creativity will be the next talent pool, and the more obviously you do creation, and the more creative people you will have, the better it is. Machine working with us, advanced robotics. We talk about the car. We talk about the 3D. Rethinking energy. We talked about energy storage, renewable energies, and oil and gas exploration. And finally, changing the building block of everything. Okay, we talk about advanced materials. We talk about next generation genomics. Now, so what? What do you want to make out of that? Now, give you my own way of looking at that. I'm first going to start from a macro view, then an industry view example, and then why not an entrepreneurial point of view. So first, if we are right, and you look at these 10 technologies, and we don't know what we don't know, but if you look at the total of that, okay, they will, as I said, they will all come in parallel. So don't try to say, I've got something in advanced genomics and I need to focus on that. Please take your time to understand the interface. Again, the mobile internet plus RFID plus energy storage plus automated cars equal totally new transportation, totally new cities, no longer need of a car insurance, and that changed dramatically the ecosystem. So think about the combination of that in the first place. Second point, that will dramatically change the competitive advantage of nation. Well, today you have been known, for instance, as, with Bangalore and cities like here, about, ICT and the like. Most of the time, China has been known for low cost, and that's the reason that a lot of people basically delocalize to China to move things back. But again, that's going to change dramatically with advanced manufacturing. With 3D printing, I can basically manufacture diversified products which I don't need the scale of what China can produce. So China, with a low-cost model, will basically fail. That's very important. So think about that too. 3, it's about talent. The more you think about that, these technologies tells you that you need risk to be part of these technologies, and they represent even more of the total of the economies. And 2, labor is moving because of this technology to be substituted, enhanced, and even more enhanced because of creativity and talents. Again, as I said, advanced robotics can do complex tasks faster, but cannot create the task. You're going to have to do that, and it's about creativity. The role of the public sector remains large, as we said. Again, if you think about my story about the cars and the fact that you're possibly going to need to get not only 4G, 5G, mobile internet, and towers enhanced by your mobile operators, you likely have to add 10 times more of microcells to make the system work. Who's going to pay for it? Okay? Who's going to put the backbone and all the things for this to happen? it's likely to be the governments because this is a public infrastructure. So again, the very first point to remember is that these technologies are amazingly disruptive. Think about them in combination. Think about them as changing dramatically the competitive aspect of your own nation. It's likely to change dramatically the type of talent pool that you want to have, much more from creativity than a fast tasker. And yes, the public role is important, and possibly they should work with you and you should push them to start investing and make bets in these technologies. The micro view, as I said, 10 years is usually long and it's usually short. If you work with big companies like we do, the strategic planning is usually done in 3 years. This technology will possibly impact in 5 to 10 years. So I guarantee you, when I go to work with clients in these technologies, most of the time, it's not part of the strategic planning. It's out. And the problem is that it's out, and they do it every 3 years, after two cycles of 3 years, they are basically too late, or after 3 times, they are fully disrupted. That happened to the Nokia of this world. That happened very quickly to a BlackBerry of this world after 1 cycle. Depending on whether you are in high-tech B2C, it happens in 6 months' time. So the point is that the disruption is usually at the door. So whether you're an entrepreneur or not, and you are a big company, watch out, make your homework, because they can affect you quite fast. 2, commitment. Commitment is important. Now, if you go to Google R&D spend is obviously on where it makes money, which is search and possibly now a bit of YouTube. Now, the thing that they've made to develop their own innovation was a simple innovation in the first place, was to ask every engineer to work in collaboration with one marketer and give 20% of his time every week to work on something. Now, 20% seems, a funny numbers, but 20% times 10,000 engineers give you 2,000, things that 2,000 days of engineer time, a passionate time that possibly could develop something interesting. But more interesting, Google said it's not enough. Let's go for Google X. And Google X is based on a very fundamental premise, which is if you come with an idea which is not transformative enough, it cannot be part of Google X. So Google X by design will invest more R&D than the R&D which is spent today on search, because otherwise it cannot be transformative. Now, you can joke about the glass, you can joke about different things that Google X will come out with, but it's about transformation. So I encourage you as an incubator, as a large company and the like, to think big, because it's ahead and it's about transformation. It's not about marginal things. Third, don't put all your eggs in the same basket. One big bet and a few aspects. Again, the way to do that is to keep your IP on some instances, but please externalize, cooperate, talk, ingest, and basically create this kind of community sense that you have today. Go to market, it's quite important. If you have no vision as to when the market will come, okay, it will not work. And by the way, it's about a lot of entrepreneurship. If you don't do it in the entrepreneurship side, it will never work. And as I say, think like Google X way. Now, here is an example, which is a real example. Think about Lego. Lego is this kind of company in Scandinavia which is doing this kind of a small break for kids. And if you look at the business model is well established. And what they didn't realize is that if you take the implication of that, what will be the implication? Well, the macro impact has been, first let's look at 3D. And 3D, first you have to sort out the hype. Now, you can do a lot of 3D today. What costs the most is obviously the material to print, but as well the printer itself, simply because it takes time to ingest and basically develop the model out of 3D. So you can do that on very small items like staples. And we know as well that in the long term, it will change to be bioprinting of living organs and you name it. But for them was to say, look, what's the sequence that you can do that? And obviously, if you do small breaks, this could be done in 3D. The second macro change was the way you live as Lego is to obviously get as many interesting models in the market at time of Christmas for kids to buy. But the interesting thing about 3D is that for the first time, your kids, who tend to be very creative, or at least want to do the things their own way, could put the color, the shape of those models the way they want. So you can start to version much more the type of basic model building blocks of your bricks of Lego and start to make a lot of money by just creating versioning of the same model that you have. Same thing that happens is that the implication is that the supply chain of Lego is totally obsolete. Because today, they anticipate certain models. They start to produce that after Christmas, January. They think they have marketers, creators. They get the models. They possibly do a deal with Disney to basically reproduce in Lego a merchandising from Disney kits. And then they start going to the supply chain, produce and get ready for Christmas. The point is that you don't need that supply chain anymore, because that supply chain is possibly too long, that supply chain is possibly obsolete and cannot do the versioning. The 3D is what you possibly need to basically be selling or get somebody to license, like we do in HP for the printer, and get this as a licensing model and get this thing in just in time. So the micro impact is quite important because it shows that, there's new value and a lot of disruption. So first, you can customize. Think about your handset. Today, most of you in the handset, you possibly on the smartphone, you have a cover where you can print the picture of your kids or your best picture of the day, or you can change the way you want. That simple model, basically of 10 to 20 euro, if kids change 3 times or 4 times a year, makes more money than being in the handset business, for instance. And for Lego, the design municipality is key. But the key fundamental thing for Lego is to understand that the real value is shifting because of 3D to creativity and not to licensing Disney. It's about creativity and customization. And by the way, what they discover very quickly, the only way to get creativity and value appropriation was to source a crowdsourcing community of kids and co-create with kids, the best model. That's the only way to basically get, input and R&D for free from the community of kids, which in exchange will be produced and customized by the kid themselves to the 3D, first virtually and then to 3D if they like it and there is enough of scale. So radically different business model, but again, changing dramatically Lego to being a cost-efficient, low-throughput companies to becoming a consumer-centric, community-based kits with versioning and licensing of their own right and not licensing of Disney. Now, I'm finishing here and try to summarize a bit what I've said. First, I said technology matters. And technology matters a big time because it basically is 50 to 55% of the next growth curve. And within that, if this is 55%, 3 times more is being shaken and disrupted. 2, as entrepreneur, you should look at that. Even if you disrupt and receive only 10% of that market disruption will add, as I said, something like 12 to 15 trillion in the next 10 years. Having 5-6% of that is a huge value that will come every year. Third point I was making is that those technologies that we have looked at are important not because we believe they are, it's because we have done our homework to sort out that they passed 4 tests. They passed the test of there is a market, there is a market proof, there is a disruption, there is a technology evolution, there is a technology acceptance by the consumers, and there is obviously disruption. 4, it's not something that you should try to do by yourself, even if you look at that. Look from an angle of all these technologies happening in the same time. These 10 will dramatically impact every industries in the same time. So for macro impact, it's quite big. Other things I've said is that at the end of the day, you have to think of that today, not tomorrow. And you have to look at that from a very global aspect. It will dramatically change the macro view of India. It's likely to change your own micro view of your industry. It's likely to change dramatically the way you should push as an entrepreneur certain type of technologies. Look at the ecosystem and don't be shy. Invent, adapt, push, create the externalities, push the government to fund, or at least to build the infrastructure and the enablers. And at the end of the day, that will give a country advantage. My only question to you is that I'm not obviously an expert in India, but hopefully in today, I will give you my piece of questions and possibly challenges to you. First, if you don't believe this list, what is your list? First question. Second thing, if you believe this list, which one do you believe is the most promising for you? Not because you believe into it, but because you can really shape it. And how tomorrow morning, maybe tomorrow morning is Sunday, but Monday morning, what do you do about it? What kind of deals, what kind of stuff are you going to be doing? 3, any good entrepreneur that I know of not only works for himself, but needs at least a social gesture. So what can you do that will help you becoming disruptive, but also somebody that will give back to your country to build the next stage of competitiveness and possibly the next wave of greatness of this country? These are my 3 questions. I hope that this was at least a good setting for this afternoon. I'm thrilled to be there and I'm feeling honored to be talking to you. Thank you.